Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
The first time I saw Marie Delacroix, she was elbow deep in the guts of my race car, cursing in French at a stubborn bolt that had probably been cross-threaded by some ham-fisted mechanic 3 seasons ago. Vincent, my manager, my controller, my self-appointed god, had hired her as a favor to someone, or maybe as punishment. With Vincent, it was always hard to tell the difference. Emma, he'd said that morning, his voice carrying that particular tone of disappointment I'd grown. To know, like my own reflection, meet your new mechanic. Try not to distract her the way you did Rodriguez. Poor Carlos had made the mistake of complimenting my driving once too often within Vincent's earshot. Last I heard, he was changing tires at a garage in Tucson, his dreams of Formula racing as dead as roadkill. But Marie looked up from my engine bay with grease smeared across her cheekbone like war paint, her dark eyes assessing me with the same intensity she'd just applied to my carburetor. She wiped her hands on a rag that had seen better decades and extended one toward me. "Emma Powell," she said, and my name sounded different and her accent softer, like something precious being unwrapped. "I've watched your races. You drive like you're running from something." The observation hit me sideways. In 10 years of professional racing, through countless interviews and press conferences, no one had ever seen through me so cleanly. Vincent's mouth had tightened into that familiar line of disapproval, but I found myself stepping closer to this woman who'd just read my soul through my driving style. "Maybe I am," I admitted. Marie smiled then, slow and knowing. "Good. The best drivers usually are." Over the following weeks, I found excuses to spend time in the garage. Vincent wanted me studying footage, working with the fitness trainer, schmoozing with sponsors, all the things that made me a profitable asset rather than a person. But I was drawn to Marie's workspace like metal shavings to a magnet. She worked with a precision that bordered on artistry, her hands moving over my car's components with an intimacy I envied. When she talked about engines, her whole face lit up, animated by a passion that Vincent had spent years trying to drain out of me. "You know," she said one afternoon, her voice muffled as she worked under the hood, "this car could be doing better. The weight distribution is off, and whoever set up your suspension clearly learned their trade from a YouTube video." I perched on a nearby workbench, watching her work. "Vincent says the car is fine, that any problems are driver error." Marie's head emerged from the engine bay, her expression sharp. "Vincent says a lot of things. How many of them do you actually believe?" The question hung in the air between us like exhaust fumes. How many of Vincent's proclamations had I accepted without question? That I was too emotional, too reckless, too soft for the sport? That my success was purely due to his guidance? And my failures were character defects he hadn't yet managed to correct? "You're staring," Marie said, not looking up from the wrench in her hands. "You're distracting," I countered, surprised by my own boldness. She finally met my eyes then, and something passed between us, electric, dangerous, absolutely forbidden. Under Vincent's iron rules about professional boundaries and staying focused. "Good," Marie said simply. That single word hit me like a physical force. Good. When was the last time someone had been pleased by my attention rather than seeing it as something to be managed or redirected? When had anyone looked at me like I was a gift rather than a problem to be solved? "Emma?" Vincent's voice cracked across the garage like a whip. "We need to talk about your focus." And just like that, the spell broke, but the heat that lingered, settling into my bones like an engine warming up before a race. Vincent's office smelled like leather and disappointment. The walls were covered with photos from his glory days as a driver before the crash that ended his career and birthed his need to live vicariously through others. He sat behind his mahogany desk like a judge preparing to deliver a sentence. "Your lap times are inconsistent," he began without preamble. "Your focus is shot, and I'm hearing reports that you're spending too much time in the garage." I shifted in the uncomfortable chair he'd deliberately chosen for these meetings. "I'm trying to understand my car better," Marie's been explaining. "Marie's job is to fix what's broken, not to play teacher to a driver who should already know her machine." His fingers drummed against the desk. "You're getting distracted, Emma, and distractions are luxuries we can't afford." The "we" stung, as if my career, my life, my choices were somehow a collective enterprise rather than my own. "She's a good mechanic," I said carefully. "The car's running better than it has in months." "The car was fine before. What's changed is you." Vincent leaned forward, his eyes calculating. "You're 26 years old, Emma. Prime years for a female driver. We can't waste them on ... complications." Complications? As if Marie were a mechanical problem, rather than the first person in years who'd looked at me and seen potential instead of deficiency. "I want to drive," I said. "That's all I've ever wanted." "Good. Then we understand each other." Vincent's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Stay focused. Stay professional. And stay away from distractions that could derail everything we've built." I left his office feeling like I'd been hollowed out with a spoon. Everything we'd built, as if I hadn't been the one risking my neck on every track, as if my hands hadn't been the ones gripping the wheel through every terrifying moment, when physics and courage met in a dance that could end in glory or disaster. But as I walked back toward the garage, I caught sight of Marie through the window. She was bent over a parts catalog, her brow furrowed in concentration, completely absorbed in solving some mechanical puzzle. There was something beautiful about her focus, the way she approached problems like personal challenges rather than insurmountable obstacles. When she looked up and saw me, her face brightened with a smile that felt like sunshine after weeks of storm clouds. "There you are," she said. "I've been thinking about your transmission. I have some ideas." And despite Vincent's warnings, despite the rational voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like his, I found myself moving closer. "Tell me," I said. The team trailer after midnight was a different world. Gone were the daytime sounds of engines and air tools, and Vincent's constant commentary. In their place was only the soft hum of electronics and the whisper of Marie's breathing as she studied telemetry data from my last practice session. I'd been walking the empty paddock, too restless to sleep, when I saw the lights still on. Everyone else had long since retired to their hotel rooms, but Marie was still there, still working, still trying to find those extra tenths of a second that separated good from great. "Can't sleep?" she asked when I appeared in the doorway, not looking up from the screen full of data traces and timing charts. "I keep thinking," I said, then stopped. What could I tell her? That Vincent's warnings had been playing on repeat in my head. That I was terrified of wanting something I wasn't supposed to have, about tomorrow's qualifying. Marie spun in her chair to face me, and in the dim light of the trailer, she looked softer somehow, younger. The severe lines of concentration had relaxed, revealing the woman beneath the mechanic. "About you," I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. The admission hung in the air between us like a confession. Marie's expression shifted, becoming more focused, more present. "How?" she asked quietly. "How what? How are you thinking about me?" She stood slowly, moving closer with the careful deliberation of someone approaching a wild animal. "As your mechanic? Your friend? Or ... Her thumb grazed my lower lip, and I forgot how to breathe. The touch was feather-light, questioning, giving me every opportunity to pull away. Instead, I found myself leaning into it, my eyes fluttering closed. As the person who sees me, I whispered. When I opened my eyes, Marie was watching me with an intensity that made my pulse thunder in my ears. Here I was, 26 years old, a professional athlete at the top of my game, and I realized I'd never once been asked what I wanted. Every decision, every choice, every moment of my adult life had been filtered through Vincent's vision of what was best for my career, but Marie was asking, not with words, but with the careful way she cupped my face. The question in her dark eyes, the patience in her stillness as she waited for my answer. I answered by closing the distance between us. The first kiss was tentative, experimental, two people finding their way through uncharted territory. But the second was hungrier, more certain, fed by months of stolen glances and carefully neutral conversations that had been anything but neutral. Marie tasted like coffee and possibility. Her hands, those clever hands that could diagnose an engine problem with a touch, mapped the curve of my waist with the same precision. When she backed me against the desk where she'd been working, scattering papers and sending a coffee mug clattering to the floor, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. "Are you sure?" she murmured against my neck, her breath warm on my skin. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said and meant it. What followed was a revelation. Marie approached my body the way she approached everything else, with focus, with patience, with an attention to detail that left me gasping and grateful. She took her time, mapping every sensitive spot, learning what made me arch and sigh and forget my own name. When she lifted me onto the desk, her hands sure and strong, I understood for the first time what it meant to be truly seen. Not as Vincent's driver or the media's rising star or the sponsor's investment, but as Emma messy, complicated, human Emma who wanted things she wasn't supposed to want and felt things Vincent had trained her to suppress, later when Marie's mouth moved down my body with the same precision she used on an engine. I discovered what worship actually felt like. Not the crowd's cheers or Vincent's grudging approval when I won, but the way Marie whispered perfect against my thigh like it was a prayer. Like I was something sacred rather than something to be managed and controlled. Afterward, we lay tangled together on the narrow couch at the back of the trailer, my head on Marie's chest, listening to her heartbeat slow. Her fingers traced patterns on my bare shoulder, and I felt more at peace than I had in years. "What happens now?" I asked. Marie's chest rose and fell beneath my cheek. "Now you qualify for pole position tomorrow," she said, "and we figure out the rest as we go." But even as I dozed in her arms, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Vincent had made his position clear, and defying him had consequences that went far beyond hurt feelings. Still, for the first time in my adult life, I felt like the risk might be worth it. Qualifying went better than it had any right to. Despite the sleepless night, or maybe because of it, I found a rhythm on the track that felt like flying. The car responded to my inputs like an extension of my own body, and for those precious few minutes, there was nothing in the world but the machine and the perfect marriage of speed and precision. I took pole position by 0.3 of a second. In the garage afterward, Marie caught my eye and smiled, a small private thing that felt like a secret shared between us. But Vincent's expression was thunderous as he watched the mechanics prep the car for tomorrow's race. "Lucky run," he said to anyone within earshot. "Let's see if she can keep it together when it matters." The dismissal stung, but I'd learned to expect it. Vincent never praised success. He only found new ways to diminish it, new standards I'd failed to meet. But Marie's quiet, well-driven, as she checked over my car, meant more than all of Vincent's. Grudging acknowledgments combined. The rest of the day passed in a blur of media obligations and technical meetings. Vincent kept me busy with sponsor appearances and strategy sessions, but I caught glimpses of Marie throughout the afternoon adjusting suspension settings, checking tire pressures, doing all the invisible work that would determine whether tomorrow's race ended in victory or disaster. It wasn't until evening that I had a chance to seek her out. I found her in the garage long after everyone else had left, performing one final inspection of my car by the harsh light of work lamps. "You don't have to stay so late," I said, leaning against the workbench where she'd organized her tools with. "Military precision? Yes, I do." Marie didn't look up from the brake caliper she was examining. "This is race day preparation. No shortcuts, no assumptions. Is that what last night was? A shortcut?" The question came out harsher than I'd intended, colored by a full day of Vincent's subtle digs and pointed warnings about maintaining focus. Marie finally looked at me, her expression unreadable. "What do you think?" "I think Vincent's getting suspicious. I think he's looking for reasons to blame my performance on anything except his own shortcomings as a manager." I ran a hand through my hair, suddenly exhausted. "I think I'm scared of what he'll do if he finds out." Marie set down her tools and moved closer, her oil-stained fingers gentle as they tilted my chin up to meet her gaze. "Emma," she said softly, "what do you want?" "Not what Vincent wants for you. Not what's safest or most professional." "What do you want?" The question hit me like a physical blow. What did I want? I'd been racing for so long under Vincent's direction that I'd forgotten. I was allowed to have desires that existed independently of his approval. "I want to drive," I said slowly. "I want to win races and feel proud of it instead of just relieved that I didn't disappoint anyone. I want to make decisions about my own life." I paused, gathering courage. "And I want you." Marie smiled, the expression transforming her entire face. "Then we'll figure it out together." She kissed me then, soft and sure, and for a moment I let myself believe it could be that simple. That wanting something badly enough could make it possible, that love could triumph over politics and control, and the thousand small ways Vincent had trained me to doubt my own instincts. But as we broke apart, I caught a glimpse of movement in the garage's entrance. A shadow that might have been nothing, or might have been someone watching. Someone reporting back to Vincent about his driver's latest failure to maintain professional boundaries. The paranoia felt familiar, comfortable in its awfulness. Vincent had trained me well to see threats everywhere, to assume that happiness was a luxury I couldn't afford, and wanting was a weakness to be eliminated. But looking at Marie Brilliant, fearless Marie who'd rebuilt my car and was slowly rebuilding me, I decided that maybe it was time to stop living like a prisoner of someone else's fears. Race day would tell us everything we needed to know. Race day dawned gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that separated skilled drivers from merely fast ones. I'd barely slept, my mind churning through racing lines and gear changes, and the memory of Marie's hands on my skin. But as I suited up in the pre-dawn quiet of my hotel room, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, genuine excitement. About racing, the garage was already bustling when I arrived. Marie was there, of course, making final adjustments to my car with the focused intensity of a surgeon. She caught my eye and nodded professional, appropriate, giving nothing away to the casual observer. But I saw the warmth there, the private smile she saved just for me. "Car's ready," she said simply when I approached. "She'd do whatever you ask of her." Vincent appeared at my shoulder like a bad omen, his cologne sharp in the morning air. "Remember, Emma, this is what everything's been building toward. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment." The warning was delivered with his usual smooth confidence, but there was something underneath it. A tension that made my skin crawl with premonition. The race started well enough. I held my pole position through the first corner, then began to pull away from the pack with the kind of smooth, controlled aggression that Marie had helped me find in my driving. The car felt perfect beneath me, responsive, balanced, hungry for speed. For 27 laps, I was untouchable. Then, coming into turn 3 at 140 miles per hour, I pressed the brake pedal and felt it sink to the floor. Time dilated the way it does in moments of absolute terror. I pumped the brakes frantically, feeling nothing but empty air where stopping power should have been. The concrete barrier rushed toward me like a gray wall of judgment, and all I could think was that Marie was going to blame herself for this. I yanked the wheel hard right, using the last of my momentum to scrub speed before the inevitable impact. The car spun sideways, tires screaming against asphalt, and then everything went dark in a symphony of crumpling metal and breaking glass. I woke up in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. My head felt like it had been used as a soccer ball, and there was a sharp pain in my ribs every time I breathed. But I was alive, which seemed like more than I'd had any right to expect. Vincent was there, of course, sitting in the visitor's chair with an expression of practiced concern. Behind him lurked a man I didn't recognize, expensive suit, calculating eyes, the kind of face that belonged in a boardroom rather than a hospital. Room. Emma, Vincent said, his voice thick with false relief. Thank God you're all right. The doctors say you'll make a full recovery. My car, I croaked, my throat raw from the breathing tube they'd removed hours earlier. What happened? To my car? Mechanical failure, the stranger said before Vincent could answer. These things happen in racing. Very unfortunate, but not uncommon. Something cold settled in my stomach. Who are you? Tom Bradley, representing your insurance company. Just need to get a few details for our report. His smile was professional and completely without warmth. You don't remember experiencing any problems with the brakes before the incident? Incident, as if my near-death experience was nothing more than a paperwork inconvenience. The brakes were fine during warm-up, I said carefully. They felt normal until they didn't. Vincent and Bradley exchanged a look that made my blood run. Cold. There was something choreographed about their concern, something that felt more like damage control than genuine worry for my welfare. Where's Marie? I asked. Vincent's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Miss Delacroix has been terminated from the team, effective immediately. The words hit me like a second crash, worse than the first because this one was intentional. What? Why? Professional misconduct, Bradley said smoothly. Failure to maintain appropriate boundaries with team personnel. Plus, given the mechanical failure that caused your accident, we felt it was best to make a clean break. They were blaming her. Blaming Marie for the brake failure, for the crash, for the simple crime of caring about me as more than just a racing asset. The injustice of it burned in my chest like acid. You can't do this, I said, struggling to sit up despite the pain. Marie's the best mechanic I've ever worked with. If there was a problem with the car, it wasn't her fault. Emma, Vincent said, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd learned to hate. You're emotional right now, traumatized. These aren't the kinds of decisions you should be making in your current state. Emotional, traumatized. All the ways Vincent had taught me to dismiss my own instincts, to doubt my own perceptions. But lying there in that hospital bed, everything became crystal clear. They'd fired Marie not because of the crash, but because of me. Because Vincent had finally figured out what was happening between us and decided to eliminate the threat to his control. The brake failure might have been genuine mechanical failure, or it might have been something more deliberate, a way to remove two problems with one brutal solution. I want to see the brake line, I said. Emma, I want to see the brake line, I repeated, louder this time. I want an independent investigation of the crash. And I want to speak to Marie. Vincent's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Marie Delacroix is no longer your concern. Your only concern should be recovering so we can get you back on the track where you belong. But as they left to let me rest, I noticed something on my bedside table that hadn't been there when I first woke up. My racing helmet, cleaned and polished, sitting innocuously next to a water pitcher. Inside the helmet, tucked into the padding, where only I would think to look, was a folded piece of paper. Marie's handwriting, sharp and confident. Check your fuel line. And remember, you're the fastest thing on this track. Don't let him slow you down. The fuel line, of course. Cut the fuel line partially, let it weaken over the course of a race, and eventually it would fail catastrophically. Brake failure at speed, a convenient accident that could eliminate an increasingly problematic driver while generating enough sympathy to avoid awkward questions. But Marie had found it. Marie had discovered Vincent's sabotage and left me proof, even as she was. Being thrown out of the paddock in disgrace. That night, alone in my hospital room with machines beeping around me like electronic crickets, I made two decisions that would change everything. First, I was going to prove that my crash was deliberate sabotage. Second, I was walking away from Vincent, limping, bruised, and freer than I'd ever been in my life. The investigation took 3 months. 3 months of lawyers and depositions and forensic analysis of brake components that told a story Vincent never wanted revealed. The fuel line had been partially severed, weakened just enough to fail under race conditions. Security footage from the garage showed someone working on my car late at night, someone with access, someone with motive, someone who stood to benefit from my accident. Vincent lawyered up immediately, claiming the footage was inconclusive, and the brake failure was normal wear and tear. But his insurance company wasn't buying it, and neither were the racing authorities. By the time the report was finalized, Vincent's reputation was in tatters and his racing license permanently revoked. I found Marie working at a small garage outside Phoenix. Her talents wasted on oil changes and brake jobs for suburban commuters. She looked up from under the hood of a minivan when I walked in, grease-stained and beautiful, and exactly as I remembered. I heard about Vincent, she said without preamble. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. I'm starting my own team. I said, all women, drivers, mechanics, engineers, everyone. We're going to prove that talent doesn't have a gender, and success doesn't require compromising your soul. Marie straightened, wiping her hands on a rag that had seen better days. Sounds expensive. I've got sponsors. Turns out there are a lot of people who are waiting for someone to challenge the old boys club. They just needed someone willing to take the risk. And you think I'd be interested in this venture? I stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her dark eyes. I think you're the only person I trust to keep me safe at 200 miles per hour. And I think I'm in love with you. The admission hung in the air between us like a challenge. Marie set down her tools and studied my face with the same intensity she'd once applied to my car's engine. You know, she said finally, I've had better job offers. More money, better benefits, prestigious teams. My heart sank, but none of them came from someone who sees me as more than just a pair of hands with a wrench. She smiled, and it was like sunrise after the longest night of my life. When do we start? 1 year later, I stood on the championship podium holding a trophy that represented everything Vincent had said I could never achieve on my own. The Phoenix racing team, our team, mine and Marie's, and the dozen other brilliant women we'd assembled had just won our first major race, and the crowd was going absolutely wild. In the garage below, I could see Marie grinning as she watched on the monitor, her headset around her neck, oil stains on her coveralls like badges of honor. She'd rebuilt my car from the ground up, engineered solutions to problems other teams hadn't even identified, and somehow found time to rebuild me in the process. Powell, her voice crackled over the radio. Using my last name the way she always did during official communications. Told you you're the fastest thing on this track. I keyed my radio, knowing my response would be heard by millions of television viewers around the world, and decided I didn't care. Wait till you see how fast I can get us out of these fire suits tonight, I said. The laughter that followed was worth every risk we'd taken, every bridge we'd burned, every comfortable lie we'd refused to accept about what women could and couldn't achieve in a man's sport. When Marie climbed onto the podium to join me, because she'd earned her place there as much as I had, and kissed me in front of the cameras and the crowd and the whole complicated world, I finally understood what winning really felt like. It felt like freedom. It felt like choosing love over fear, truth over comfort, possibility over the safety of staying small. It felt like flying,